Abstract Transmissions.
And hello, thank you for listening to Abstract Transmissions. Today we have a really awesome episode. I am very excited to invite Bev Vincent and Robin Furth, both fantastic authors and authors of The Road to the Dark Tower, Bev Vincent, and Robin Furth, Concordance, Guide to the Dark Tower. I forget exactly the full long
oh, that's all right. Yeah, I know.
Title.
It's quite a long one. Stephen King's The Dark Tower, The Complete Concordance. And Bev,
Perfect.
Put your book up. You're gonna have to wiggle it because
Okay.
because of it's disappearing. But there we go. There we go. Both our books.
It's funny. I'm in the process of looking for both of yours on the bets right now. Because it's gonna be, for me, I'm being the nerd that I am, it's going to be absolutely necessary to kind of put into the part of the collection that I'm doing right now. So I'm excited about that. I'll talk to you guys. Do you guys know if there's any specific artists, anything related? And we were talking initially if there was any type of art related editions or anything that came out. This is a one-off question.
Oh, for you mean for the Dark Tower?
Well, no, either of your books.
There's anything,
yeah.
The big editions. Yeah, because Cemetery Dance has done both. They did.
That's what I thought. I thought I saw them, but I wanted to ask you guys.
I'll show. Hold on. I'll grab mine. Bev, do you have yours? You're gonna have to wiggle it again.
This is all good, also good promo too, because these are I can't only imagine amazing. I love the Cemetery Dance gift stuff. It's so cool. I've only got one. I think it's the FDNS, which I absolutely adore it, but it was just one of those one-offs. I saw it and I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna break the bank a little bit, but I couldn't help it with the slipcase and everything. Those Cemetery Dance gift editions are just absolutely amazing.
Glenn Chadbourne did the artwork for The Road to the Dark Tower, the limited edition.
He did. Okay, I was going to ask. I could have swore that was the case. He did the remarquee. I forget how it's pronounced in my Full Dark No Stars Cemetery Dance, actually. So
this one's Michael Whalen. That one.
Perfect. Yeah. That's really
awesome. Beautiful.
That's
and
amazing.
Then that's the revised and updated for the 2012 version. And this one, here it's Alan Clark. That one that comes in the box. It's beautiful.
Really
that's
cool.
the original one.
Oh my
and
God.
Then
this is my senses are tingling.
Yeah, and there's another one. Actually, I think Bev's done some of this too. Can you? Yeah, that would be great.
I have the Alan Clark artwork.
Can you actually?
Oh wow!
Oh beautiful! Oh wow!
Oh my goodness!
I actually talked to Alan while he was working on this to give him some details.
That is just amazing, isn't it? I've seen.
I'm gonna take
that. Is that
is just gorgeous.
Digital version of that online?
No, it's a print.
Oh well, I meant do you know if there's a digital version anywhere online of that?
I don't know if he's got a digital version.
Kind of want it as a background on my.
Here we're actually, it's just great. We're having show and tell.
Yeah, it's great.
Then Glenn Chadbourne, he did some beautiful portfolio artwork.
Whoa, I did not know that. I totally.
And this one,
cool.
It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I absolutely love his work. I think that his style is just unreal. For me, I know art is so always subjective, but for me, his style, the type of just feeling and almost organic quality to it, it really stands out, and just pulls me right in,
Yeah, do you guys have Bev? Do you have these ones? You might have originals.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. You can see.
Oh, that is too cool. I didn't even.
Yeah, they're really gorgeous. I'm trying not to
bend
them, and I want you guys to see them.
I have to find these.
Beautiful, Bev.
Oh wow!
I've got Jay Lee.
Oh wow!
That's great.
He's really amazing too, isn't that something? Oh my God, this is totally nerd,
yeah, no, it's
my
great.
sensors are firing right now. This is so awesome. I've been on this kick buying art lately. Just nothing too expensive because I can't really afford it. But I did end up getting a wheel and print for the Dark Tower, the one at the very end, the last novel. It was I think it's called the Dark Tower. I think it's
It is. Yeah, it's the Dark Tower. Yeah.
Oh, I
Yep,
think
and then this is the
Robin
cemetery
froze.
edition of the Dark Tower Companion.
Oh, cool! Look at that. And these things are huge. I can't wait to dig into. I'm gonna have to get one in paperback and then one in hardcover, just because I'm gonna have one for the set and then one I'm gonna have to read. Like I'm gonna have to really dig into it, because I admittedly have to say, like, I've dug into some of the stuff that obviously is transposed online from both of your work, but it's all information that is pretty much transferred, right? It's not directly from the novel. So I mean, your encyclopedias, rather.
I think you lost Robin.
Yes, I noticed. I was hoping that it would just she'd pop right back on here in a second. Usually it just goes fluid, and and then I just admit back into the room and nobody knows. But it didn't. It's not popping back up. So let me see if I can send her a link real quick on my phone. Should make sure that. Oh no, it's still the same link. It didn't change out or anything. So until she pops back in, we'll kind of dig in a little bit, because I am very interested to pick your brain and everything Dark Tower related. And I know, admittedly to the guests out there, not everybody's read the Dark Tower, so there is going to be some spoilers undoubtedly throughout this this episode. So if you haven't, or if you don't care, I'm the type of guy that have never been bothered by spoilers. I don't know. I don't avoid them. I mean, I guess I avoid them, but I don't, it's not the end of the world, I guess, if it's spoiled too early. So, a question I definitely don't know if it even ties in any way, because it isn't really technically a novel, but there's a screenplay. Andre Lenoge from The Storm of the Century.
Yes.
Any input on this, to whether he is? Do you guys know if he's, if he's another rendition of? I know it's not RF, but Randall Flagg, because taking it.
There have been other villains in Dark Tower, in Stephen King's work that are just, they're just one-off villains, and I don't know that we always have to try to make the Stephen King universe of everything. I've never really considered Lenoge to be Flagg. I've sort of just thought of him as just
my connection was just the Legion thing, because
Legion has so many biblical, historical ties that anything that's supremely evil, they either are Legion or they claim to Legion, and by its very definition, Legion is we are many. So
right.
There's lots of people out there.
That makes perfect
just
sense.
Like people looking for connections between Pennywise and Dandolo.
Right.
Which they're clearly of the same type, but I don't think they're necessarily the same entity.
Right. Or even, the species, right? I mean, it seems like to me that they're kind of similar, like library policeman or the outsider, that there's all that type of, need to feed off of emotion and like a emotional or psychic vampire, rather. But not.
And for Pennywise, it's fear, and for Dandolo, it was, humor that he was feeding off. So, they've got different diets.
Right. And then there's was it grief for the the protagonist?
So yeah.
Let me see if she sent me an email saying that she had trouble getting back in, because I just haven't seen her pop back up. And there she is, right as I was saying it. Awesome. I should there we go.
There we go.
Perfect. Hi.
Sorry about that. I have
okay.
no idea what happened. It's the Crimson King. It always happens.
That's it. He's stepping in. He's being obdurate.
Bev, the tower's gone.
Yeah, it was just getting too convoluted with trying to do things.
Oh, trying to show artwork, definitely.
Am I too loud, by the way? I didn't know, because I'm coming in really strong through the headphones. I just didn't want it to be too.
No, it sounds good. It sounds good.
Cool. We were just talking about well, we kind of
Storm of the Century and Andre Lenoge, whether he was a flag-like entity.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Say that again. I should probably plug in my earphones.
Oh, it's okay. Andre Lenoge. I was making a correlation. I try not to, just assume that everybody, is, unless there's an RF initial there, that they're flag, right? Like Fanon or Flagler, I think is the other one, or I don't remember one of his other ones. But Andre Lenoge, because one, he's wearing black primarily, and two, he's his goal is to take a child for whatever reason, and then three, my connection was Legion. But as Bev was saying, Legion literally is you're one from many, so that makes sense if there's that kind of multiple connection. But also like the correlation between Dandelo and It and the Library Policeman and the Outsider, and they're not all the same type of species, but they're all some type of psychic vampire, or emotional vampire, whether it be grief or fear. But as we're saying that, what popped in my head, I think, would be the whole concept of walk-ins. And something that, I guess this is a question for you guys, because I don't know. I'm just going for my purely speculative position. But walk-ins being entities that come into our world or into levels of the tower through areas that are thin in reality.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what's the idea behind like walk-ins coming into another person's like mind, so to speak? I think we touched on this briefly, but like in 11/22/63, or what was the other one I wrote down? I thought was kind of interesting. Whether it be Frank Dodd, would that apply? Anybody taking over another person's mind, whether these are different types of walk-ins, so to speak, Mr. Munchin, or anybody that's going into our world, but not necessarily through the traditional method. Well, traditional.
Well, I mean, Roland qualifies in both of those categories. I mean, he was
thinking about that too.
A walk-in into Maine when he and Eddie show up and go visit Stephen King, but also the way that he entered the minds of people when he went through the doorways
in the drawing.
Yeah, and you have the go ahead. Sorry, Bev.
I mean, the human aspects that he go into would certainly consider him to be a possessing entity. Not a very pleasant experience for those people.
Yeah, and you think about the Dogon, the internal Dogon, when you have Mia taking over Susanna Dean's body. You have that kind of takeover, so many different forms of it in the Dark Tower novels, but also in other King fiction, which I think is really fascinating, that sense
Dr.
of
Sleep.
Yeah, being controlled from outside.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, you're fine.
And it just pops right in my head.
With the alien taking up residence in the character's head.
That's right.
The whole rifling through the file cabinets to find memories.
Oh my gosh, yeah. In both Dr. Sleep and oh my gosh, yeah. I did. I was thinking of Dr. Sleep and I was thinking the filing cabinets, but then right into oh man, what's his name? Why do I want to say? I keep on thinking Georgie. It's not Georgie. In Dreamcatcher, Jonesy. That that perspective of being stuck in someone else's mind, or being vice versa. That disorientation of that. So that's amazing. The filing cabinet thing. I totally spaced that. Thinking about Dreamcatcher. But that's very. I'm trying to think of it. Is there any other works along the line where we can think of that being another what's the word I'm looking for, another theme, not necessarily being in somebody else's Dogan, so to speak, another reality.
Yeah, I think it does come up from time to time in other works. I'm not sure to what extent. I mean, I think of Lisey's story. There might be elements of that, but this whole concept of the mind as being like the palace of memories that somebody can wander through.
What about revival? When you think about that, with I need to go back and reread it, but you know, with the
I need a pen. Sorry, go ahead, keep going.
I was just trying to think with you know, the electricity of you know, bringing someone back, but then you become also kind of like a doorway, don't you?
Right.
In revival, I have to go back to that book, but it rang a bell. I was looking at that recently because of the that theme of the kind of the sideshow, and I find that really fascinating.
Me too. You know, it's interesting.
The Walk-ins make an appearance too in King's most recent book. It's sort of a cameo appearance, but there is reference to the Walk-ins in later.
Oh
yeah. Yes.
I'm so pumped to read that now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I gotta put that down. So
it's amazing because Steve has written so much. When you think about the body of work that he's created, it's really stunning, and the way he has affected how people write now, the popular consciousness, the way we think about horror, the way we think about hauntings. There is a whole generation, you think about it, of filmmakers and writers who've been so profoundly affected by his work. It's amazing. And you come across references to him everywhere in his work. Because I was watching it.
Is based on it. Literally, that entire Fear of Clowns. Sorry to interrupt again.
No, it's true. And I was thinking about that because I was watching an old X-Files, you know, one of the ones from the 90s. And Mulder says something, and what's her name? Scully says, "Oh, is it like Carrie at the prom?" Like, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, there we go. You know, it's just amazing. It's everywhere, which I think is quite wonderful.
Futurama,
so we live in the
Simpsons. I mean, I could go in long lists of all the things that just stick in my ADHD brain.
But it's become so prevalent that King himself has to have his characters acknowledging the Stephen King writer creator. I mean, Eddie in the Dark Tower knows of The Shining.
Right.
He doesn't know who King is, but The Shining is something that, you know, the movie that exists in his reality.
Yeah, because he does talk about, doesn't he, that the way the camera pans through. It's really interesting, I think, how that happens in the multiple realities. Yeah, how the books work and how he's reflecting on his own work. Yeah.
And he does it in a way very effective. When he breaks the fourth wall, he doesn't do it in a convoluted way. I mean, this is my opinion. Obviously, people are so like here, there, and everywhere with the literary world. I understand that. But for me, my expectations is an amazing story. Does it pull me in as a reader? And do I visually get just completely engrossed in it? And the answer has always been yes with Stephen King. And the thing that blows me away is his ability to kind of bring all of those together unconsciously. He's not doing this from an egotistical standpoint. He's doing it from a subconscious. He's streaming consciousness rights. So the fact that he's able to incorporate all of these different facets and connections and correlations together that have happened kind of naturally, and obviously with the building of the Dark Tower, but it just comes just kind of out naturally. I mean, and you can see that. I shouldn't speak for him, obviously. And the fact that he probably, you know, there's a few things that he moved around to make connections, but for a lot of it just seems natural that they just happen to live there. And he's just the conduit in which the Gans pen, you know, like it's just that I can relate to that as a musician, I guess, is what the thing for me is.
You know, I think that people like Robin and I and fans in general spend a lot more time thinking about this linkage and intricacy more probably than Steve does.
Yeah.
For Steve, it just flows out of him. It's just a natural product of his creation. The rest of us sit down and say, oh, he did this and he did that. And it all sounds very deliberate. And
but it's not.
I think, you know, the deliberation is intuitive at his level, whereas for us, we're looking at it from more analytical sometimes.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and I think it's that imaginative universe. What we're doing as readers and as fans is we're entering his imaginative universe. which is literally this universe with interconnected themes and characters that will emerge and reemerge, like we have RF. I share the initials. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even. Yeah. Oh my.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Now.
But then, like you say, there are other flag related characters that have, you know, they're not exactly the same, but they have similar characteristics. But I think I told you this, Bev, I might have told you this once, that somebody tried to convince me, it was a King fan, that I wasn't real because my initials were RF. I'm like, no, I'm real.
What? Somebody actually?
Yeah, I think it was an online thing. They thought I'd been made up.
Oh, like you were like a Richard Bachman scenario.
Yeah. Or you know, or that
Inez.
maybe somebody else taking the name, but I just thought it was funny. Well, so there you go.
And the RF thing sometimes, I mean, the Gwendy series that King has done with Rich Chismar has an RF character.
Yes, very different though.
Very different though. And I think that the original intention was that he might be a Randall Flagg-like thing. But over the course of the books, he's become much more a force of the white than of you know.
So what if there is a dichotomy there? Like, what if
or he's just a coincidence, and you know, there are coincidences. He just happened.
Yes, exactly.
I had Rich on the show actually, and I kind of got a little bit more of a direct. It wasn't a direct answer to that, but kind of insinuating. So I was still on the thought process that he was the same person, and I may have read. I definitely probably read into that incorrectly, but.
Well, by the time you get to the third book, which I don't know.
When does that get published? Has that been
next year?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've read it. You've read it, obviously. It's great. It's wonderful. But yeah, that's really comes out in the new book, which,
Cool. So we can be careful to that one. But at the same time, I really adore both the first and the second. And me and Rich talked about briefly on the show, but I got more the intention that there's this world moving facet about Richard Fannin, and not necessarily that he confirmed or anything saying that he's him, but that somehow he's impacting a lot there.
Definitely has a big impact. He has the same sort of global multiversal impact that other RFs have.
It's less about evil or good and more of just it is. It's not something that it's not benevolent or malevolent. It's just kind of like, or maybe it is benevolent. It's just kind of like in the middle. It is here. It's a reality, like Maturin. It's a part of it.
Sorry, I'm interrupting too, but it's funny as we talk about this and the RFs, the different aspects of RFs, it does actually make me think about the Dark Half. And one man, even though they're twins, they're not. You know what I mean? It's the creative, the fictional character that then takes on life, who's quite an evil character. But you think they come out of the same man in a weird way, that we always have that in us, don't we? We have good and we have evil, and we have choice.
Right.
And in a strange way, if you think about that aspect of, Flagg / Flannan / the various incarnations, you do see that choice, don't you?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. So.
Oh, that's great though, how it kind of comes out though in conversation.
Yeah, you think about it.
But a lot of people complain about what happened to Flagg in the Dark Tower series. His comeuppance was rather abrupt. But when you go back and look over the history of Flagg, going all the way back to his days in the Eyes of the Dragon, he has grand plans, but he never really ever manages to seal the deal, to close the deal. He's a little bit ineffectual.
Not great execution.
And I read an interview that Steve did about the Stand and how Flagg ends up, at the end of the miniseries. And he said, at one point when he was working on the book, he really wanted to reduce Flagg to almost a humbug, like a used car salesman in Vegas. He's going to crash down from his heights and just end up being this little.
Because that's his ka, right? That's what he did to other people. He used them as his pawns, and then what do you know? He's used as a pawn. It's a wheel. That's amazing, actually, for me at least as a reader. I always appreciate how it turns out.
It does make you think about the nature of evil and what we face in the world, and I hope Steve's right, and it always
Yeah.
you know, gets kicked off because boy, the world can be a scary place.
It
As long
can.
as he's not right about the way things end up in Revival, because that one is one dire picture
Yeah.
of what's facing us.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
For
Very
sure.
dire. Oh,
Yeah, at the end of that, I'm just like, well, that was bleak as hell. Oh, like
it's
that.
funny, isn't it?
Creepy in that way, that just like,
Yeah.
what just happened?
Yeah.
Holy crap. I personally have never had a problem with any of the endings. I know probably that's the thing and whatnot, but I like the fact that they're organic the way they are because it seems more real to me. That I
Yeah.
prefer getting pulled into another reality, another world, you know, another level of the tower. Who doesn't want to kind of escape? That's the point of reading, I think, for a lot of people when it comes to fiction. And I get pulled out of that when it seems forced, you know.
Yeah.
And
It's funny that you think about that bleakness, because I mean, it's funny because we're going to be giving a lot of spoilers about a lot of books here. But on 11/22/63, this is I was thinking about that book as we were talking, and I was thinking about the moment where, you know, history's changed. You want to save JFK, you change history, but then you look at what happens.
Right. It's breaking
And
things down a little bit, maybe in its own
it's
way.
so bleak, you know, and you think about that, about the awful things that happen in the world that we really want to avoid. But it's almost like saying, well, we don't know what the other alternative would have been, how to stop this, what else would have happened.
The balance there, like
That's a dialogue my wife and I often have. I mean, she looks back and says, you know, back when I was 18 or 20, I wish I had done this differently or I'd gone there. And I said, well, you know, if you'd done that, then the sequence of events that happened that ended up with us eventually meeting each other and getting married might not have happened. If you
Exactly.
it's all butterfly effect, you know.
Exactly.
That is amazingly my late wife and I actually had the same exact conversation. So it's a little jarring to hear that from another person.
My husband and I have had the same conversation as well.
Yeah, it's that, like, if things didn't happen the way that they happened, and even all the awful, just
all the good and bad,
terrible things,
yes,
make us where we are here and now. This conversation, everything that exists almost seems like it's a wheel. Cause
yeah,
it really is.
and I think that, you know, the darkness in horror and the darkness in science fiction, and, you know, in King's books, in Steve's books, it makes you think about the actual way we have to live, and there's a way in which we're told, oh, if you just buy these products, your life will be happy and everything will be perfect. Well, that's not realistic. That's not what we're faced with. You know, that older view of the world is full of good and it's full of darkness, and we have to live through that.
Kind of thing. That, you know, the whole that, like, people are, you know, at their core complex. Things are complex. There's so many facets.
Reality's complex.
Nobody's just evil, right? There's that I mean, maybe there are some people that are just evil, but how do they get to that point? What creates that evil? Because it does seem like there's a lot of, like, ingredients that, you know, even somebody awful like Hitler, there's so many ingredients that creates somebody like that can make.
Well, and as writers, we're challenged to say, you know, the evil characters are the heroes of their own story.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
very good point.
How do you depict that without making them just be cardboard evil characters?
Right.
And again, I mean, look at Under the Dome, Jim Rennie. I mean, here's a guy who, given certain set of circumstances, the worst emerges from him, and we understand a little bit of where that comes from. If those circumstances hadn't happened the way they did, he might have remained sort of a small evil, you know, sort of just a local, you know, disruptor. But given that opportunity, he sort of elevates himself just because of circumstances. But he had that inclination in him to begin with, and he was just presented with the opportunity to Like,
Yeah, and I
manage-
think that comes up a lot, like you say, in different books. You look at, sometimes being thwarted in love. You think about that with The Stand. That characters that, like you say, have maybe that, you know, selfishness or whatever in them, or a certain kind of little evil. That seed then grows and becomes something bigger, and it makes us reflect on ourselves and our world and the people we know.
Yeah.
So you're
and then
thinking
that
about Harold,
becomes
Harold Lauder.
Yeah, Harold, exactly what I was thinking of.
Seriously, that
Yeah.
guy, tragic, right? But there's so many identifiers there, like that you could just kind of, you can see how he ends up where he is. You don't
Yeah.
want to, like, what's the word, you don't glorify it, but at the same time, like, you're not praising those decisions, but you can see how they happened, kind of.
Yes.
You can see how some people just make a couple really bad decisions that slippery slope into really bad decisions that cascade into an avalanche of bad decisions.
And especially people who are suddenly given an opportunity to have power over other people.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Greg Stillson's another character who,
Yes.
humble beginnings, but through a series of unfortunate incidents, he gets more and more potential to cause problems on a bigger and bigger scale.
That's true. I didn't really think about that. How it. It's been a
Story
while
for
since I
our
read
times, I'll tell you.
Dead Zone, but yeah.
Woo!
Wow. Yeah. Whoa. The correlation between that. I remember because I was reading that for the first time ever, actually. I was late to the game on all the popular stuff, right? Carrie, Cujo, everything that you should read first, I read last. Everything you should read last, I read first.
Yeah, you do it in your own order. I mean, I think everybody does that because it's a big canon, so you just kind of pop
for
down
sure,
here, there.
for sure.
Yeah,
But it just
I do
seems
the
like a lot of
same.
times people go with the most popular bestsellers, and people are like, "Wait, you can't start at the Dark Tower." I'm like, well, that's kind of how I got introduced to him. Had I not been, I probably still think that he was, and no offense to Clive Barker, but Clive Barker, and they are very different writers in the aspect of visceral horror and psychological horror, and not that Steve can't do all of it, because you really can. He's very versatile. The psychological horror, Gage getting hit by a Mack truck, that is so much more terrifying to me than somebody getting, cut apart for creatures on a train.
Yeah, as a father, you'll see.
Yeah.
And even worse, the funeral scene when
oh god,
he and the father-in-law are having a violent disagreement in front of the casket.
Man, the reality in that, how just real that is in families, and like stuff like that happens, like the real grief, that's like real life to me.
And everything that he did, you could anticipate.
Yeah.
You could the real dread in that book comes from, I know what he's going to do.
Yes. Oh no, don't do it. Don't do it.
And I had that was the one book I swear that I had to put down several times because I just had that real deep sense of dread.
The Pet Cemetery, yeah.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one there, because I did
that one.
I was just like, okay, I got to take a little break from this. This is
funny. It's not funny, but actually just thinking about that very thing, because I remember reading about the inspiration was that one of Steve's sons ran out on a road, and there was that moment of fearing that he'd be hit, and then you get that idea in the story, and then also the pet cemetery behind his house. But actually, when I was a graduate student at the University of Maine, there was a story, and I don't know if it was true or not, about there had been an old native cemetery on the ground that was taken over by the university, and some of the what do you call it, the housing for students, weird things happened because it was like people say, oh, it's just cursed ground because that ground was stolen. I thought, oh my god. Like something from Pet Cemetery.
So Orenco, is that the name of the company that was the chemical company? Wasn't there a chemical company that was tied in?
Orinoco or something like that.
Yeah, I keep on saying Orenco, but I don't think that's right. But yeah, do they come back up again? I remember hearing about Cujo and Pet Cemetery. I haven't finished Cujo yet, actually. I'm in the process of reading that, as well as the Dark Tower.
I don't think that Pet Cemetery really crosses over into other
books all that significantly.
Okay.
Standalone, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that there was just like a mention of Cujo, and then obviously you've got George Bannerman, right? That he's in.
But
Is he in there?
Gage's sneaker or something like that shows up in Insomnia. I think that's what.
Yes, you're right.
Oh wow,
That's really, yeah.
Oh,
Isn't
whoa!
that
I did not
strange?
make that
In that
correlation. Holy
At
crap.
Atropos' lair, when they go into the lair, they find all these-
Yes, that's true. That is a very ultimately creepy moment.
Holy
Those little
crap.
doctors.
Oh my god, the little doctors. Yes, I love.
Yeah, I loved those actually. I thought,
Oh,
they're
there's so
great.
much ground to cover here. I can't even don't even know where to
I know, I
I
know.
could seriously go because really everything that's heavy dark tower is the thing that I go to first, always. Like Hearts and Atlantis, right down to you know what's weird. We were talking about doorways, and I don't want to forget this, even though I have it written down. Doorways and how different types of doorways there are. And one of the first things that brought me into Stephen King outside of the Gunslinger, we were talking about sci-fi magazines and Twilight Zone, was
Oh, I missed that.
the John. Oh yeah. Well, no. We like last time during the podcast we talked briefly about the sci-fi science fiction magazine.
Yes. I
said I
thought
was
maybe
saying I
you
had the
guys talked
Gunslinger.
about it. Yeah, when
no. I actually I might have brought this up just for a quick second, but the Jaunts specifically.
Definitely.
How
yeah.
I don't know if there's any real connections there, but for me, I've always had that in the back of my head. The madness during that span of time from point A to point B.
It's
The
like
relation
going
between that and
into
Todash.
Todash space.
Yeah.
He's exactly what I was thinking. So I'm glad I wasn't thinking the wrong.
It's also interesting because the idea of the jaunt, it's also a really nice nod to Bester's novel, his sci-fi novels, the Star Is My Destination. He jaunts too, doesn't he? So it's really interesting because I think Steve often pulls in references
I
to
haven't
books.
read that, so now I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's a wonderful book, Bester's The Star Is My Destination, and it has another name. It was published under 2 different names, and I don't remember what the other one was.
But you know, Mrs. Todd also goes on little jaunts too.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, when she drives. It's funny because I returned to that a couple of summers ago. Somebody had mentioned it to me, and I'm like, yeah, I have to actually go reread that again. I love that story. That's a wonderful story.
And you know, inspired by his wife's seeking the shortest way home from all these different road trips.
Wow.
Be
Wow.
careful,
I
right?
didn't realize that was the origin. That's great.
That's so cool. I didn't either. I love that. That's so cool. I'm totally writing stuff down on top of like points, but also so I have to kind of just kind of remind myself later to kind of go read and check out a few things, because this is definitely something that I really wanted to talk to you guys about, was the whole doorway accessibility between worlds and realities, but also in the most recent short story collection. I don't know why I can't think of it, with Rat and the Furth.
If it bleeds.
If it bleeds, yes. So If It Bleeds, awesome story in itself, but the one in which we're realizing that these realities are inside a man's head who's dying,
Right.
and these stories and experiences, Life of Chuck. That one really, it hit me because of the time and period that I was reading it, but also those correlations between other worlds kind of dying and breaking down and Discordia, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And you think of the life of the writer who has created all of these worlds.
Yeah.
As he gets older, and you know, perhaps his memory is not quite the same, and some of his created worlds are starting to disappear from him the same way that they did in Chuck's story.
And the product of those stories, because his brain is breaking down too, which makes for those really weird kind of confusing aspects. Like throughout that whole thing, I'm like, what's going on? But the ending, I just like, it made me love it so much more, because it really, all of it just kind of ties it together for me perfectly. I love that kind of nice tied bow at the end of it, which doesn't always happen.
It's a story unlike anything Steve has ever written. And it is
that's
really unique and quite magical.
Beautiful. It really is beautiful piece of work. And I can't get enough of stuff like that. That just really, it's this type of stuff that I could read again and again, especially because I like short stuff.
Mhm.
But I also like the long stuff. It's very much the product of my generation's attention span, either really long or really short. Which I didn't realize until somebody
I
pointed
do
it out.
love those Steve short stories. I think they're very beautiful.
Me
I think
too.
you're right. I think it's a real art form, the short story, to really tell a whole tale and involve the reader in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they are beautiful. I think you're both right.
You want to talk about doorways? There's one that has doorways in the title. I am the doorway.
I am the doorway. Yeah.
And it's another
Yeah.
case of something outside taking over somebody, projecting
Yeah.
themselves, taking over them.
Right.
We assume that that's
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And then you think even of doorways in the landscape. There's the doorway into the self, but there's also speaking rings and where you have these doorways
Oh my
that
gosh.
lead between
And-
worlds. Yeah. And
That's
So good.
magical things.
yeah,
Yeah.
thin places.
Thin places.
Yeah. So you
where
get back to that.
The fabric of reality runs thin. This is something that has impacted me. I mean, another pop culture spillover in my music. Like, I'm not I very identify with Steve in the aspect that I don't write anything deliberate. Anything that comes out of my head is totally, where'd that come from? You know what I mean? That is just not what I intended necessarily. It comes out, but I'll find those things that carry over from science fiction or personal experiences. But it becomes a topic that for me spills over into my own music, lyric writing about reality and where, it wears thin and our own experiences and how concrete are they. And it's just interesting because I can see how much in pop culture, obviously, the impact of, and I'll say the Dark Tower, because in my opinion, his entire body of work, really, there's so much of it that connects. And you guys would say your percentage wise probably know better than I would, but I'd say it's a large amount. And I think that once you kind of get into it and you just kind of fall into that, it definitely pulls you in. But I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, you did. I mean, you're talking about inspiration, aren't you? And that
Yeah.
is something that does come back up.
Huge.
And Steve talks about it in his work. And I think any creative person, if you're a musician or a writer, you do think about that, that magic of inspiration. And you think
Right.
about historically people talking about it actually being a being that comes and brings you the muse, brings you inspiration,
Yeah.
or what aspects of your life. It's a really huge and fascinating topic. But it's interesting we're talking about doors, because I was thinking we've been talking a lot about doorways, like doorways in the mind and the psychological doorways. But one thing that's also really fascinating, the Dark Tower series, you have those mechanical doors, the doors
Yeah.
that begin to break down.
Yes.
And it makes you think about the kind of magic, which is
got my shirt.
yeah, and NCP. Oh, there you go. That's great. Shardik, that's great.
Well, for the listeners out there that don't have the video, I'm showing a brand. I'm gonna give them a shout out because I do the voluntarism ads. I don't do ads because I'm not collecting monetary anything on podcasts, and I'm not big enough to be doing anything like that. At the same time, for me, voluntarism ads are so much more important because I just love their product. So Content 19, they make shirts for Stephen King and
that's great.
stories, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, they've, as far as I know, they're one of the few that has the ability to actually use like licensing pictures and all that stuff. So
That's
amazing
wonderful.
product. And they made this one kind of a custom because they didn't have it on yellow. I'm like, I want that on a yellow hoodie. Like, that is exactly what I want. So good old Shardik, showing him off on the TV, on the old television. That's what we call this now. This is the television.
It's great.
folks out
You
there.
know, on the subject, for people who can't see, Bev's got the best backgrounds I have ever
my gosh.
seen.
He's got
How
the
did you
dome up.
manage this? Did you plan this all ahead of time for us?
I just have these kicking around.
That's
so
amazing.
awesome.
I'm just like, wow.
For the folks out there that can't see, Bev's got some awesome backgrounds with the Zoom filters.
Under the dome, you've got
Jay
Dark
Lee's,
Tower,
gunslinger.
you've got
This is
everything.
great. Guys, I'm having
So
a
I'll use
blast
my
with this.
fan
I'm not
under
gonna
the
lie.
kissing moon.
Oh,
just
yeah.
for a minute. Oh my God, that's
Amber.
great. Now we're in The Shining. That is too creepy though.
Oh,
You're gonna have to
whoa.
change that one
Look at
because
that.
that is super creepy. I mean, I'll just be thinking about it. Come
That,
play
There-
with us
there
forever
is-
and ever.
There is
Isn't
a
it-
version that have the little girls in the background, but I
Oh
didn't.
gosh, you've got to do that if
Yeah.
you have that.
they're
I don't
right
think
behind you, Bev. They're sitting behind you.
I know.
Exactly. I
That's
guess
awesome.
We'll go back.
Oh, can I just
Back-
say for
Oh,
a second
there
while
you
we were
go.
looking at the Shining there, how well Mike Flanagan did with the Doctor Sleep and how
yeah.
That was wonderful.
that was like shot for shot comparisons to the original and how he's trying to bring it all together. Even the actors that were casted for what's the recast for Wendy and Jack, because I mean they were in a way trying to really blend those two together to kind of almost redeem that, and not to trash Kubrick's version, but again, I like Kubrick, but I wasn't a fan of that because I read the book and I really just
Yeah.
want the hedge animals, damn it. So the miniseries is my preference usually, but I really love how well Mike Flanagan brought those two together, brought some of the things out of the first movie out of the first adaptation that should have been there in my opinion, and kind of made it work into Dr. Sleep's adaptation to make both of them kind of more whole together for the fan service rather, I guess.
Well, yeah, he was in
And-
an awkward position because so many people know The Shining only through the movie.
Yes.
But those of us who've read the book, how do you
Make
address
everyone
the real differences? In one, the Overlook burns to the ground. The other one, it survives. And how do you rationalize those and make everybody happy? I think he came up with a good solution.
Absolutely, because they ultimately do the same important things in Doctor Sleep that happens in the novels for the most part. Even the stuff that should have happened in the first movie or in the first story adaptation rather gets pushed out to later events. Which I thought was cool.
On the subject of Dr. Sleep, I loved the depiction of Rosie the Hat.
Oh, she's so wonderful.
Yes.
I thought that was brilliant. I thought, how in the world are they going to show that? And the steam,
Oh, yeah.
I just was so impressed by how they handled that and how well they did it. And the way they made Rosie the Hat beautiful but sinister.
Yeah.
And I thought
Perfect
that was
casting.
just perfect.
I mean,
Yeah,
perfect
she was
casting.
brilliant. She was brilliant.
All
that
right
actor.
around. Yeah. I mean, perfect. She's how
Yeah.
I visioned her in my head, which doesn't happen usually in adaptations. There's very
Doesn't
few
usually
scenarios.
happen. That's why Robin and I are both familiar with this little short video that we've been passing around.
Yes.
A graphic artist from Brazil named Feda. And he has done these computer-generated images of scenes from the Dark Tower series. And the images themselves are really beautiful. But what is so interesting about them is when I look at them, they are exactly how I envisioned so many different elements from the series.
Oh my goodness. I totally
I
want
thought
to
the
see
same
this.
thing. I thought that was just brilliant. It's because Bev sent it to me and I was just so pleased. And then I heard from him as well. And he sent it to me again. So I saw it twice. I've actually watched it
Is it
quite a
something
few
on
times now.
YouTube? Is it on YouTube?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it
We
is.
can send you a link actually if you want to see
That
it.
would be awesome. I'll
Yeah,
try to
because it
post
is wonderful.
remember to
It
actually
is
do
really
it this
wonderful.
time. Post it in the comments there for anybody listening or watching rather, because that's that I'm totally all about that type of stuff. Fan art in general for me, but also the stuff that directly ties in. Obviously, canonical would be the right canon.
And the whole the style of it reminded very much of what Brian was doing with Discordia.
Oh
Yes.
The rendering.
Yes, I can see that. And even some of like the hallway underneath the the yeah.
Castle.
Yeah, actually no, the hallway underneath the restaurant. I can't believe I'm blanking on this.
Oh,
Vampires are eating.
Yeah, Dixie Pig.
Yeah. Dixie
The
Pig.
Dixie Pig, and things like that.
Yes.
Just various images of things, just beautifully.
God, I love that book too.
Yeah.
I love all of them. Seriously, I love the whole story. I was just saying earlier, 6. This is number time. I haven't got through other books like Cujo, and I haven't even read Carrie, but I'm on the Dark Tower for the 6th time.
It's a world that people return to. A lot of Dark Tower fans do that. They read it multiple times and they go back on the journey with Roland.
It's comfort place. It's a home, nice, comfy, safe space for me to go into. As messed up as that may sound to listeners.
No, a lot of people feel that way because you're with Roland and you're on that journey. Absolutely. It's also interesting how for the mythology, specifically Dark Tower with the 19, fans say, oh my God, I've had a 19 or blue car syndrome, and these things do start to manifest in your consciousness and in the world around you. Do you guys have that occasion, like an attack of the 19?
So even more so because I live about 15 minutes from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So I have friends, like I grew up in Somersworth and I'm not in Somersworth, but in this area, Stratford County. Technically Durham is like where the events oh my gosh, why can't I think of Johnny, the Dead Zone? Why can I not think of
John Smith?
Yeah, John Smith. The last name is Smith. Oh my God, Mark Smith, John Smith. Nice to meet you. He's literally where he lives. What was the name of the town? I don't remember, but it where they explain it in the book is basically Durham. It's right near UNH, and which is odd because then they talk about UNH and Joylands. About a lot of talk about UNH, right? And it's just like these are all places that have been so close to me my entire life. So for me, it has even more so been a reality. Like I see these things and it's just like, obviously it's not real in the aspect that I can't, but I can almost reach out, right? What's the nature of reality? If you really want to break it down. But I've lived so close to Stephen King my entire life that it's just, you live in New England and he's the writer from New England, the writer up north. Everybody.
I grew up in Eastern Canada in New Brunswick, which shares a border with Maine. Yeah. And as a kid, I was in Bangor probably every other summer, and you just wonder how many times did we sort of cross paths or something back in those days?
You probably did. It's interesting because we're talking about that, realizing that you're actually living in the dream universe. Because the first time I read Salem's Lot, and I was just a kid, and I was at my grandparents' house in Surrey, Maine, and I was reading it, and then all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a minute, that's not that far. Where all these vampires are. It's about, a 40-minute drive. Well, actually, no, longer than that. But still, you start to realize, wait a minute. And then, now this is creepy because, you have the vampires from Salem's Lot, and you have a map and you can put them on the map. And then when I was at University of Maine, I hope this person isn't listening, I met one of the fellow graduate students. He really believed that he had seen some vampires in Maine, and he actually wore a big cross, but he also had silver bullets in his room. And I was like, whoa. And I said, where did you see them? And he was telling me, what he saw, and who, one was in Bar Harbor, and someone I do think was supposedly floating outside. Outside his window, and I was thinking, boy, that sounds like Salem's Lot.
It sounds like a movie I saw once.
but yeah, so hey, that idea, and hey, who am I to say?
Hey,
I don't know.
No,
maybe.
Right. I'm not gonna lie. I have had some really weird moments, but I've always been really hardline skeptic about a lot of things in my life. So my wife passed away. Some of those things shifted a little bit. Like my way I think about things spiritually and whatnot have definitely changed. Sometimes things like that just change your life, but for me, I've always had a hard time with anything that's not based in reality. I'm very much on the science side of things, but then I also live in these fantasy worlds that I want to escape to. It's almost like because it's so adventurous and so wonderful that it's just so unrealistic and unattainable, which isn't necessarily the case, I guess, in a lot of aspects, right? Sometimes you can just reach out into these parts of your brain, but I have always struggled with, that whole thing. But then things like UAPs, not UFOs, UAPs as they call them, the military has until June 1st to produce everything they have to Congress unidentified aerial phenomena in the
Yes, fascinating.
what a time to be alive, because this is now that's based in
Yes.
reality. They genuinely don't know what's going on here, and they want info.
Yes.
So what is
And
reality?
well, that's the question, is it? And you think about the touch, and you think about the shine, and you think about those aspects of human consciousness. Um, you know, you do have Men Who Stare at Ghosts, the book.
Right.
But you also have, though, you do have that history of documentation with something like the Society for
actually
Psychical
existed.
Research. That's actually, you know, it's still doing research into
Maybe they weren't
these
called
phenomena.
the shop, but
Yeah, and
testing
life after
LSD
death,
on people.
and the thing that's so interesting, though, is these areas of scientific study are still being studied at respectable institutions, because I think as our knowledge changes and grows, some of what was always put as, oh, that's just fantasy, people are saying, wait a minute, okay, let's re-examine this on a scientific basis for yeah, for what people have perceived. Who knows what that will lead to? I don't know. But I think that even modern contemporary physics senses of what is time.
Right.
What are other realities, other dimensions?
Exactly. And this is something that is spoken about very seriously with, you know, physicists and astrophysicists, and you know, these are the questions of
big questions
of our time period.
and they're happening right now more and more
Exactly.
often as we go on, like the whole crescendo thing that they're saying, like in the aspect of human consciousness, we've been going through and I brought this up before, I'm sure, like I say always, listeners out there are rolling their eyes because I've talked about this a ton of times, but the whole span of human existence, or just special existence, happening over a long period of time, and then the existence of hominid man, the existence of upright, Homo sapiens being closer and closer together. The Renaissance, computer, technological and industrial revolution, all these different things getting closer and closer together to the point where we're now seeing them manifest themselves in real time. And we're at that point now where, well, it's just going to keep speeding up to the point where we're actually seeing it happen in real time. Like 10 years ago, 16 gigabytes of micro SD data cost $164. Now you can get them for $2-3 online. And that's just happening quicker and quicker. So where are we as a species? Are we getting to that point where we're about to, combine with technology? When you think about like the Neuralink and that stuff that Elon Musk's trying to do, where, they've already created it. Yeah, really. Right there. It's on my shirt. Right on my shirt.
Exactly. But then you think about that idea of the great cataclysm, where we're also heading towards that environmentally. So
yeah, that's a tough conversation, because it is scary. Yeah, things are at the same time speeding up. They're also breaking down.
Collapsing.
It seems like, yeah.
Yes.
End up with things like the blasted lands and
the talisman, the wastelands, the blasted lands. Had this question written down. This is important. I have it circled, actually. Thank you, Bev, for you segued this part of the conversation right into something that I absolutely think is super important to me. And maybe, hopefully, people out there too. I'm totally using this opportunity to feed needs. It's totally selfish, I'm not gonna lie. The wastelands. It's like a New England town. The wastelands. The wastelands. Come on down to the wastelands. That's not right. That's not the main accent I was looking for. The talisman, when they're going on the train tracks, that whole scene there, kids with guns. That's all I can think about on a train. Blasting off these creatures, just taking out all these guys. But that the wasteland area, like the blasted lands.
Yeah.
It's like, is that the same spot? Like, I look on the map, it doesn't look like it is, but I don't know, because time and size and space are all funny. So where is the blasted lands in comparison to the wastelands? Is it the same spot? Because they both take place in Midworld, if I'm correct, right? Or
For the talisman, territories. So in a weird way, there are once again those parallel worlds, related but different. That's how I always
they're not
view
in
it.
the same. Well, because I thought there was a connection between Little Sisters of Eluria and the talisman and the doctors and all of that.
There's a lot of crossover. The way I view it, I mean, this is one of those big discussions we could have. Bev, definitely chime in here for your view. But the way I think of it is
different levels.
If you think about the multiple worlds and the echoes between multiple worlds.
Yes.
Because we are not Roland's future. Roland is not our future, his world, but they're parallel worlds.
Yeah.
And we can see it's like that moment when reality divides and there are multiple possibilities in multiple worlds. Absolutely. And I see that like the talisman and Eyes of the Dragon, those are really related to the Dark Tower universe. You can see many overlaps and many repeats, but they're also different.
Right. That makes sense.
Like Delane,
So, and that was my next question, was Delane, because I think Delane was Delane brought up and went through the keyhole?
Yeah, it's also in Little Sisters of Eluria when
I guess that's where I was connecting those.
Yeah, you do have definitely those repeats, and you do have, like in a lot of Steve's work, you have characters' names echoing.
Like doing this right now.
Holy
the wheels.
I mean, Roland actually had encountered the two kids from the Eyes of the Dragon.
Exactly. They literally ride through.
Right. Yes.
Oh, they're chasing Flag.
Yeah.
Chasing Flag.
The man,
Oh.
So I mean,
wow.
The man who can turn people into dogs. Sorry.
Yeah.
I always look at the territories as being like maybe a borderland of Midworld. It's off. So I don't think the Blasted Lands are necessarily the same as the place that Blaine passes through. There's probably multiple places like that.
Yeah.
But like
they echo.
That there are so many realities. I mean, there are a lot of worlds that look exactly like ours that are just a little bit different.
Right.
The car models are a little bit different, or the movies
spirits
are a little bit different, or the soft drinks are a little bit different. On the surface, most people would say they're almost exactly the same thing, but something has happened in the past to make them just a little bit.
Exactly. Because Eddie isn't from our world.
Yeah,
right. Co-op City is in New Jersey, right? That's what.
So many of them that are dealt with in the series are different versions of what we think of as our familiar world. So it would be a mistake, I think, to think that there's only one version of Roland's Midworld.
Exactly. Because that even comes up. You have that idea of a Keystone world, but then you have many variants on the Keystone world, and
Keystone is mainly because that's the existence in which Psy lives in, so to speak. Gan's pen exists in this Keystone world, which is creating that echo, that ripple effect in other realities, but in a 5-dimensional fashion, so to speak.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you think about it.
Really is. Well, if you've ever seen what's it called? It was called What the Bleep Do We Know? I think it was way back in the 90s. And there's a lot of discussions about like quantum physics and how, and this is just what I've always kind of thought of as quantum physics, is that like if you dribble a basketball, that there's different waves of possibilities and options and different ways that the basketball could have went, but it went in your direction, meaning that Schrodinger's box, so to speak, clapped it on the main function, where until you open the box, the cat is both simultaneously dead and alive at the same time. But then when you open the box, the superposition changes. Either it is or it isn't. But until the box is open, if anyone out there is familiar with the Schrodinger box equation, I'm probably making people confused. But if you get a chance, look at it online, folks.
It is fascinating.
A very fascinating
conversation. And there may be a version of reality when you made that decision where it went in both directions, and those at that point those splinter off and become different realities.
Yeah. So I mean, that was my thought here, is that there's that same type of, like Robin was saying, that wave of reality is outside of the Dark Tower being the centrifuge, or the linchpin, the keystone, and then everything else just kind of ripples outside of that. Which
and 112263 is case in point of that.
Yeah.
Every time it goes back in the past and makes some change, the future is a different one. The green card man becomes the yellow card man.
Yes.
And so he's causing those quantum
changes in the
Those
reality.
entanglements, those quantum entanglements.
Yeah, and as a green card man and yellow card man, he gradually is just disintegrating in a weird way.
He's breaking
and
down, which is why he's drinking, right? He's just
Yeah.
like, it's just fucked. I'm gonna drink as much as I can. I don't blame him.
But if you think about that as well, I mean, I think about that idea of there being multiple worlds and multiple realities and even multiple versions of us having this conversation.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
what a strange thought. I just find that such a strange thing.
I mean, it's
contemplate.
interesting. Well, if you think about everything in a three-dimensional fashion, everything exists in 3 dimensions and just kind of like exploded in a big bang. Everything's kind of but what about outside of the dimension realities that we understand, meaning the multiple dimensions next to us, but also like how time works. We understand time is kind of linear, but time's happening in a multi-dimensional fashion. Everything's just kind of waving outward, and creating all these different ripples of realities that are so close to each other that they're almost identical. But if you went a couple down, people will be wearing hats differently, or something. It's just some variant it's only slightly different. And maybe on one planet,
2263, there was the notion that there was a way things were supposed to happen.
Yes.
And that every time
Past
Jake
is
went back
obdurate.
and changed that, he was causing chaos. He was causing
Yes.
the whole nature of reality to break down because he was making decisions on the behalf of time, and time had its own mind about it.
So
Yes, and sorry, I was just thinking
No,
about how each time he goes back through it, there's also a reset,
yeah,
which I liked as well.
is it really a reset though?
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
He's just making a new tangent reality each time.
Yeah.
He's just like, resetting for you, but what about those different realities that you left in the
No,
friggin'
it's
wake,
true.
buddy?
Exactly.
Which is totally his brain just being kind of small-minded. He's not thinking about that because he has no real understanding of it, and that those quantum realities are real to the people that exist in them, and thus bringing into the discussion of, so the worlds are breaking down because the dark tower is breaking down. Well, it's not breaking down, but the beams are being broken purposely. Could there be like that tangent of reality in which, so in the territories, Bledsoe, I forget his first name, that whole death of him happening, electrocution, happens differently in the territories. Well, people in Midworld, they're using, or not even Midworld, Midworld, where they're using the breakers to break down the beams. In another reality, could that not be Jake Epping, or Amerson, rather? I forget what his actual name is. George Amerson, Jake Epping. Is he not the cause of that? Is he not also contributing to the breakdown of those beams? Not purposely, but indirectly. Or is he a product of that? Just like he's what looks like on the surface, but in reality, there's other things going on there. So it was one thing that kind of always like, are they correlated? Are they parallel to each other?
Well, the thing that comes to my mind when you talk about the breakers, you think about the Institute, where in the novel, The Institute, where the children are also it's a much crueler situation, because they're being used. And they're being used up as well. But it's interesting how that happens, in many forms. But anyway, I got off tangent.
No.
But
that you went in that direction. That made my brain kind of continue in that way. That they're focusing their energy on killing people remotely, but is that in itself not also breaking down some of those strings?
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's the similar kind of energy. And you think about in Everything's Eventual, with Dinky Earnshaw, who begins in a very similar program where it's an assassination program, and then he's brought to Endworld, where he then starts to work on breaking down the beams against his will, of course. But
that is
so you do see that parallel,
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. My brain is just like, whoo, that is something else, because I didn't think about Dinky Earnshaw outside.
I love Dinky. Sorry.
No, he's
an
great.
Unfortunate name, but I do love Dinky.
Poor guy, all the way across. Just in general, a lot of people are just, sucked in and chewed out like a combine harvester because of the Dark Tower, or just in general reality, just people that are just in and out, and they're just pavement along the way. Roland's a good example of that, how Jake became like that. Everybody in his road to the Dark Tower, as much as he hated it.
Yeah, and one question that I've been asked over the years is, given all these parallel universes, is that has there ever been a time in Roland's journey when he's failed to save the tower?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
My argument has always been, I don't think so. I think by hook or by crook, he must always have gotten to the tower to save it. Because if the tower falls, no matter how many multiverses are, they all end.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you.
He's literally what's keeping us moving through that cycle.
And that comes back to that whole thing, that whole question about the RF character, Randall Flagg. Can he ever ultimately triumph? Well, the fact that we're still here, we're still reading, that says, well, he didn't. Same thing like Bev was saying.
Both of them are, constantly in this, death, but not for you, gunslinger. Well, not for you either, buddy. You're going to be right back at the beginning, just where everybody else is.
Yes.
Yeah. See you soon, pal. Wow. Yeah, that is, and that's why I think that I don't have a problem with how his ending comes about, right? Because he gets what it's coming to him unexpectedly. He thought he had more time. Well, so did Jake, right? So do a lot of people. And that's his karma,
And he'll get another crack at it.
Yes, you got it. Yeah.
Literally. That's another interesting thing that I did want to just while we're back on that with RF specifically, he's not always using
present company excluded.
Yes.
Sorry, I just had to
no, it's okay. That's gonna be a thing though, huh? It comes up frequently. It's gotta pop in your head often. Can't imagine. Like, as I see MS and I automatically think of my initials. So
yeah, that's why it's funny, because in the stories, that Steve and Rich are writing, with Gwendy's button box, I was just really happy that RF was kind of a better character. I was like, yes, there he goes.
For sure.
So anyway, I'm taking us off topic.
No, it's that's what we do. That's why it's called abstract transmissions, because that's all we do is just one big tangent. And this is the first time in a while I've had anything really somewhat organized, but super important, because there's so many things that I've just that popped in my head. And I'm like, that's a good question. I got to write that down. TAC, desperation, the regulators.
It's another example of a body being taken over, isn't it?
Walking.
And how they change. It's almost like the body has to get bigger and bigger to
handle it.
Yeah. That's a really nightmarish vision. Really nightmarish.
Oh yeah. That book sat with me for a little bit when I read it the first time. I'm just kind of just the visualization of that whole thing, just kind of slopping off, parts. Oh, geez. That kind of body breakdown. I really thought the thing that I found kind of interesting was, how tech kind of existed outside of the macro cosmos kind of thing. Same way, Pennywise, they're all from outside of kind of our dimensional reality. So does that mean they're outside of the impact from obviously the Dark Tower is linchpin to all of fabric, space, time, everything that we kind of know as existence. But outside of that, entropy, so to speak, is not Discordia, but Todash, right? Am I to understand that the dark space in between the walls is the hollow? It's where all the cockroaches exist. You can't see what's in there, but something's in there. It's just it's that jarring idea, but that makes a lot of sense of darkness from a spiritual perspective, right? That you've got light and you've got dark, but things exist in both areas, that there's a balance constantly being battled for, but nobody's ever going to win that balance. It's always just a tug to keep things in the middle. That's why they both have to exist. My thought is in that reality, in that dark space, is that a form of entropy? The heat death of the universe is inevitable. Every star, every piece of matter is just going to slowly break apart and just cease to exist. my thought is the universe happens as so a big boom happens, everything kind of goes out and then condenses to the point where it slowly turns into dark matter, collapses in on itself until that last little bit of matter dies and then starts over again. And that for me is just the Roland's journey again, just in that circle. He gets to the tower and it's like, oh no, this is not how it's supposed to go. And then it starts over again. And that he's just he's holding that, right? He's staving off entropy until it, as long as it can be. And then it starts again. But if he doesn't make it to the tower, if he doesn't reach that point and the tower collapses, entropy takes over indefinitely. Toadash takes over.
I've always thought that Roland's big mistake was he saved the tower. In my vision of the ideal reality beyond that, he should have just gone back to Rosalita and lived out the rest of his days.
Yeah.
His hubris of having to go in and understand the face of reality is what is his ultimate downfall.
His obsession.
Going into the tower, he needs to know, he has to understand it all. And if he had not done that, if he just turned away, saved the tower, said, job done, go off and live out the rest of your days, then I think he would have broken his cycle.
It's really interesting you should say that, because it's something I've thought about a lot too. I also think, though, if you think about what he sees in the tower, he actually sees himself and he sees his own life. And you think about that, and you think about that idea of Roland as the descendant of Arthur Eld. And weirdly enough, there is a mention that the Crimson King in some ways is also related to Arthur Eld. So you have the good and the bad offspring, and you have that sense of you really a very old idea in the Western world about the king is the land and the land is the king. And so with the land breaking down, and you have the disease of the land, and then you think of Roland's journey and all the ill he's done, and he has really tried to redeem himself, you know, from letting Jake drop, killing the people of Tull, the whole thing about you know, everything that happens in Tull. Then you have his trying to redeem himself, saving Jake, and in the end even wanting to sacrifice himself rather than have Jake die. But I did think it was terrible. He gets to the tower and he's really tried to redeem himself, and then it's like, nope, you really screwed up and you're just going to have to pay for it. So
again,
here are the notes. We got all the details. Here's everything you did along.
Exactly. Here's all the wrong you did. And so you think about that. It is a kind of like, it's almost like this idea of karma. It's like, okay,
it's a perfect ending, just in my opinion, just for the record. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but it's true. But the thing is, when he goes back to begin the journey and he's at the desert again, he can redo what he did with Jake. But the things he did as a younger man with the killing of his mother and Susan Duncan, he can't change those things. He doesn't go back far enough. So the tower is ultimately quite cruel.
It's his infinite loop. Like it's his purgatory, and he's not a bad person. He's not a good person. But because he's not either of those things, he stays right in the fucking middle.
And you think about that. If Gan is the great god, you know, the tower is the god Gan. And you think about that, what Roland says really early on in the series is, gods always drink blood. And you think, boy, they do. And the series, you think, oh no, we're all in trouble.
No, that's accurate. And I think that, oh man, that sense of cruelness from reality, right? That it so rings with people because that's true, and it's no more true for him than it is the rest of us. The difference is just a lot more weight on his shoulders.
Yes, it plays out on that much grander scale, doesn't it? But you're right. I mean, I think that one of the reasons that Roland is so popular is so there's relatable. That sense of identification. Definitely. He's flawed. He's an anti-hero who then tries to
redeem himself.
And don't we all try, unless we just give up and just
but that's what makes him a hero, is that he's trying to be the best person he can be in this scenario of obsession, this scenario of redemption, because he's obsessed with that redemption in some way, shape, or form. He thinks that getting in the tower is going to somehow bring that back, or all it's going to do is make him relive his drawing over again, over and
Yeah.
over, because he doesn't. And with that, the events of Wizard and Glass, making him relive all the events from that, because he's got to tell the story
Yes.
again and again each
Yes.
time. So maybe he doesn't have to relive that again. He can't change it, but he gets
Yes.
to freaking
Maybe
experience
accepting
it. That's
it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now you were talking about the about Tack and the creatures from outside of our
Yeah, we
realm.
got off
yes,
subject, didn't we?
So I was talking about that recently, and the book later sort of brings that to mind, because there's also
my
the
gosh.
element of the outsider in that one. But Bag of Bones,
Yes.
the evil character in Bag of Bones isn't Sarah Tidwell. Sarah Tidwell is just a ghost who happens
Yes.
possessed. And
Yes.
that concept of the possessed ghost, I think, is probably something that, as far as I know, it's unique to something that Steve
Yeah.
has written.
right.
But she is possessed by an outsider who takes over the ghost and then tries to.
It's not even her ghost. It's causing it. Yeah, it's somebody controlling.
Yeah,
it.
that's
I
actually a
forgot
very
that.
good point, Bev.
It's
Yeah.
been like 10 years since I read that, but that's amazing. I didn't. Yeah.
But Steve does go back to this concept of people, entities from outside, and they're almost always malignant. We haven't yet really encountered a benign outsider. They want to have their way with our universe, whether they're Pennywise who gets dropped here, whether by design or by accident, or any of these other Toadash creatures. They all seem to be up to stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
and it may not be
interesting.
that they want to, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, good.
But they don't. It's not that there was something bad. It's that they want to get out of their situation, or like Mia. Mia's a good example of that. She's not necessarily a terrible person, but she made some pretty bad choices to get her where she's at, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to get out of that or get her chap.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you were saying that, because I was thinking about the difference between those forces of the outer dark that will take over people. And then you have the turtle, which also, in it, they see kind of floating in outside of the same kind of outside of the multiverse. And
Yeah.
yet it's more like people aren't taken over. It's that sense of a choice of good or choice of evil. Evil will take you over, but
Right.
maybe you need a vulnerability for it to get in.
Yeah.
But that the good doesn't operate that way. So it's interesting.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like
It gets
Jack Torrance.
He's
got a
Yeah.
vulnerability. He's you let the alcohol take control of him too many times, his anger get a hold of him too many times, and that just little crack is enough for that evil to slip in like a root, like a weed, right?
Yeah.
And a
Or
crack in
like the vampire
sidewalk.
concept, you have to invite it in.
Yes,
Yes.
very
It has no
good
power
point.
until you
Even
invite
just
it
a
in.
little bit of
Very
an
good
invitation
point.
is enough. You're like,
And it's
you come
interesting.
in, right in.
Exactly, because I was thinking about that as we were talking earlier. It made me think about that idea of Roland being the flawed character, but aware of his own choices and aware of his own vulnerability to
Yeah.
bad choices, and his own vulnerability of being this kind of very self-centered person who's on the quest. Because I was thinking about that as one of you were talking about that, and I thought about the confrontation at the end of Rules of the Kala between when Roland actually faces down Ben Slightman,
Yeah.
who's actually been the one in the village
Yep.
to sell them out.
It's very
And
handy.
yeah, and Roland figures it out and he confronts him. And basically, as Roland confronts him and says, this is what you are, but he doesn't let himself off,
Right. That's true.
because he recognizes in Slightman aspects
His own
of
traits.
his
Wow.
own. Yeah. And I thought, isn't that
Recognizing.
interesting? And I thought that was a really good way to show it. It's like Roland does not forgive himself either,
Right.
which is very powerful when you think about
That's
it.
why I always thought the Horn of
Ever.
El was
Yeah.
the perfect avatar for Roland 2.0 or 19.0, if you want to call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Because the fact that he has it means that he was able to look away from the journey long enough to take those extra few seconds to pick it up.
Yes. Thoughtfulness.
Whereas in the
Yes.
past, everything was blind. We're heading here. It doesn't matter who I run over or throw aside or destroy along the way. It's all in the service of this mission. And the new improved Roland has less of that.
Yes.
We don't know that he's got none of it, but he has less of it.
Significantly. Yeah, right. Because he's making some real personal connections here. And I don't know whether guilt is the driver or not, from Jake initially, whether that one thing of him dropping him just rocks him so hard that moving forward it shifts everything. But he starts to have that real humanizing facet to his character. And he's a character study, if there ever was one, right? I mean, that talk about the real complexities of Roland of Gilead. Like, for anyone who's not into fiction, like, or not into science fiction or whatever, they're only into, specific fiction, character fiction, I would so strongly try to convince someone to give the Dark Tower, specifically Roland, a shot. Get at least 3 books in. And I know that's a lot to ask of people, but once they get in, you get so really attached to his character and the characters themselves that I don't care how much you dislike or not into sci-fi. There's plenty of people I've heard that are like only into like horror, and they somehow got just pulled right into the world of Roland. They're not into fantasy, but they absolutely love the Dark Tower. That I think that's just because the characters are so strong, the story is so strong, that you can, it really, Roland specifically, the complexity. There is no character, in my opinion, like him, and maybe biased because I just absolutely love the story, but I just feel like he is probably the most dynamic I've experienced in a character in any of the Steve's work. For me personally, is him, but also outside of Steve's work. Really amazing.
He also, one of the things about the story is, like you say, it brings in fantasy and science fiction and horror and apocalyptic fiction. So I know people who hate fantasy but really love the Dark Tower because of the science fiction elements, and they love science fiction. So I think it has many different things to offer many different people.
Makes sense.
Westerns, romance, it's got it all.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
It really does.
Exactly, definitely that romance. And then there are those echoes of modernist poetry,
right.
The world falls
Robert
apart,
Browning.
the center does not hold. Also, with T.S. Eliot and with Yeats as well.
Yeah.
Center does not hold, mere anarchy is what least is loosed upon the world.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Or that feeling that there's constantly that dichotomy between both of them, that there's that push and pull, and that tension that keeps things almost balanced in a way.
Yeah.
It's always kind of drifting one way or another, and there's that character that has to kind of bump things back in the right direction. I mean, same thing with Star Wars, or really a lot of, fantasy over the years, Lord of the Rings, anything. There's always that really important watershed moment, and then there's also those characters that are just so important to that change. Eddie, for example, I would say is so really, I mean, everybody's important to the story, but him, and again, spoiler, but at this point, cat's out of the bag.
We're full of spoilers, I'll tell you.
Yeah, him dying was probably the hardest thing I've dealt with in a book ever.
For me, it was Jake.
Cried for. Oh yeah, I mean that was just it was a
again.
boom boom boom, Yeah, again, it was just like and then
I know, again.
It was the fucking icing.
They're like, oh no, poor kid.
It was the goddamn icing. I'm like, no, not oi. I mean, I knew it was gonna happen, but
people wrote in to the office and they would say, you can kill off everybody, but don't kill Oi.
Of course.
So when Oi dies,
but it was inevitable that, look, so Susanna didn't die. Right?
No, it's true. I do think, though, what you said about
on that, I've never understood it exactly.
She was the one that escaped.
Yeah.
But she saw, really, when you think about it, all of Roland's companions dies, she escapes. But what you said about Eddie Dean's death, I've been thinking about that recently, actually. It is very moving because I think it is very realistic, that whole process of him dying, and anyone who's been there with a
Yeah.
dying person will recognize that
Yeah.
process that Susanna has to go through with him. But also that idea of, the one who lived, reusing that old phrase in a slightly different way. You live by the gun, you die by the gun.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to Eddie.
Right.
Roland
exactly
carries
right.
on, but that reminded me actually, Bev, something you said about Roland taking that time to bend over and pick up the horn of eld. One of the things what went through my mind at that moment was it also meant that he stopped by the body of Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't thought about before.
Wow, yeah.
And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because then that's a moment of not just picking up the horn, but also spending
wheel.
time with the dead.
Right.
And giving honor to the dead. So I thought that was a really good point you made.
What about the parallels between that and Eddie? Just what I'm thinking.
Yes, exactly. And they're parallels of each other, aren't they? Eddie and and Cuthbert.
They always
the Jokers, Ka Mai, Ka's fool, which I love. Actually, I love that.
Oh,
idea.
me too.
Aren't we all just Ka Mai?
Absolutely.
Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and say, "Oh my God!"
I find myself using the metaphors of Ka frequently in my own life. I mean, it really is like Ka is a wheel, but also like your plans are gonna be blown down like a barn. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Ka
comes
doesn't
like
give
the
a shit
wind.
what you want.
Yeah.
It's like a wind. It's gonna move. But it can be destructive and can take down anything in the way. And really, you can have all the plans in the world, but it doesn't care. It's gonna do what it's gonna do, and you are just a part of that. And
that's such an old concept.
Destructive path of fate.
Yeah, and it is such an old concept. And I think that the idea of this fate Ka, the wheel, things cycling but becoming new again, that's such an old idea. The center of the idea of the tower, that linchpin of time space, such you can find something, the parallel in Norse mythology, you can find it in so many cultures. So it really echoes very deeply in us,
that the human experience
as readers and as humans. Exactly.
Yeah, it's just
so that's great. Yeah.
But the interesting thing I find about Ka is that it seems to be a force that wants Roland to succeed.
Very good point.
It won't intervene directly. Presumably, Gan could wave a magic wand and make everything better, but Ka does everything it can to allow Roland to succeed.
Right.
If he's willing to take up the challenge.
Right.
Even so far as to place things in his path. When he's in Dan Below's bathroom and he finds the poem, the Browning poem, Gan placed there so that he can communicate. It's a benign force, but it's also sort of an aloof benignness.
It needs to happen because the continuation of everything, but at the same time, it's not. I've noticed it isn't super forgiving, right? It's like, use the breadcrumbs because this needs to happen, but you, like everyone else and everything, including the man in black, can be kind of thrown through you're part of the pavement. You're there, you're part of the stones that get walked on the way. And things keep moving on.
And Roland must then exercise free will.
Yes.
And he must choose and he must act. And he can save himself or damn himself. But like you say, that is
all of existence hinging on a man's choice.
Like that in the times we live in and everything we're facing, to think that here's this universe, but it's hoping for us to make the right choices. That gives me more hope.
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful way to word it, though. It's hoping for us. Like, it's there.
Let's hope.
But it's hoping for us to make the right choice. It's not going to intervene. Maybe that's aliens. Maybe that's what they're doing. They're sitting hovering over us, watching all this crazy shit with Russia and China, and being like, well, we hope you make the right choice. We're going to hang out over the nuclear installation. So if you guys let anything fly, we're going to intervene. That's some weird
Then the
stuff,
aliens, it's sad times when we're hoping the aliens will save us.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've thought about it several times. I'm like,
okay, cool. I'm not alone here because I've
No, I've thought it. Jokingly, I've said it.
Yeah,
maybe the aliens will step in and save us.
Imagine,
we're certainly not very good at this ourselves.
yeah, I should say most people can't imagine what it's like to have that conversation with their 10-year-old. It's that's
Oh, wow.
complex, tough, but also weird and kind of really, you're like, what? All right, but I mean, it is on the news and stuff like, and I was blown away because I'm watching this on a CNN broadcast where they're saying, well, people are the reason why they're having these reports done by June is because these UAPs are hanging out near nuclear installations.
You're-
They're hovering above them.
Wow. Oh,
And they've been noticed to do that, and they want to know why. That's why Marco Rubio
Wow.
cares, right? He's got contracts he's got to worry about, money down there. I don't know. Like, that's just like, whoa, that's terrifying. And apparently, we're not the only country to have verified that. And everybody else is just kind of like laughing at us, like, well, we've known this for a while, and that's what I heard the other day. The United States is behind on their knowledge about the UAPs, and that every other country's kind of known about this for a while. And it's like, yeah, you guys are coming to the table now, finally. Like, yeah, this has been it's been a minute that this has been happening, and makes you ask why there really hasn't been many nuclear tests up in space. Anytime that's ever been tested, there's been some sort of weird malfunction or failure. Some weird rabbit holes to find yourself in reading if you go online. Dreamcatcher. So that's a segue into.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking what you're saying, because I knew that there all the old records are going to be released about sightings. I knew that, but
all the way back to Project Blue Book. They're really going, and they've been released for a little bit, but they make it super encrypted. So you can go through all these old records, CIA records and everything, because of the Freedom of Information Act. But if you try to rip them apart and figure out what you're reading, you don't have a clue. Nobody knows. It's like, sure, here's all the information. Have fun figuring it out. Wink, like nobody's gonna be, you read that, you're like, what does any of this mean? You really got to dig to get good information. They're forcing them to clarify these things now and be very specifically intentional on what happened, what is being said happened, what is going on, where we're at. That's just mind-blowing that we're having to have these questions about crafts in and out of airspace that are, in and out of existence, like literally blip into existence, blip out of existence, and travel instantaneously, defying physics and laws of light speed, and that's just speed of light. It's just, anyway, a really interesting segue into the discussion about Dreamcatcher and whatnot. But I will leave this because I don't want to keep you guys too long. But this is something that is actually perfectly placed here. Doorways from one reality to another, space time, and all that. This comes up constantly. Discussion of traveling, the ability to travel, being restricted obviously by physics, but doorways eliminate that. Anytime, any place. You see, obviously, the connection 11/22/63 in the Dark Tower with the JFK thing. I don't know if that was really well planned out. That was the thought, or it just kind of led the way to connecting them. But I thought that was really amazing when I read that before I even knew the 11/22/63 existed. Actually, I started reading.
There's a passage in the Wolves of the Calla where Roland and his buddies sit down with Father Callahan, and they basically talk out the whole plot of 11/22/63.
Yeah, right. And that, so I read that.
Yes,
and didn't realize
yes,
there was an
you're
entire
right.
book. That was what led me to finding out that, like, oh, he's got an entire book about this. I thought it was just like not a historical fiction, but like a kind of like the baseball book they had, just informational.
It was an idea he had way back in the early part of his career, and he just didn't feel like he was ready to start writing it yet.
That's one big
amazing
book to tackle. So, to have all those skills and all those years of experience of writing, I can understand that.
Plus the ready access to information.
Very good point as
That's
well.
true.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about that. The stuff that's been released in the last 20 years, last 10 years, so on and so forth. Because that is a very well constructed book. I mean, just every aspect of that novel is just really amazing. The characters, the factual information, just intertwined into really amazing character stories. Like, I mean, I could go on and on about their writing. I find it interesting how I kind of came into Stephen King, though, because I really was at first like, I don't know if I'm into it, because I assumed it would be horror writing. The only thing I had ever read was it and Pet Cemetery when I was younger, and then The Gunslinger I started into when I was younger, but I never got past The Wastelands. So, and I really loved that, but it just, everything got put on hold. I was a teenager. I was wrapped up in skateboarding and being the dumb teenager. And then I didn't start reading again until I was like 18 or 19. But again, you know, The Dark Tower was that like I read around the time my mom was struggling from going through cancer, and she passed away when I was 21. But from 18 to 21, I was struggling with the where I'm at in life. I started reading again. Michael Crichton was actually I read Prey, I think it was, and then just kind of cascaded into other things. I'm like, why not start The Gunslinger again? I got through The Gunslinger, Wasteland, Drawing the Three, and the Wastelands. And then I just went on this slippery slope into everything Stephen King's written, pretty much. And is that what happens with everybody? Like, how, obviously your experiences are very different than mine with his writing, but like, is that common for everyone, that they just get pulled into it like a black hole? Not black, that's a negative connotation, but like a very strong gravitational force that pulls you like a dark tower. Is that experience been the same for both of you, reading, researching, all of it? How is it? It's an open
Bev,
question.
do you
Sorry.
want to go first, or?
Okay, so I think it depends on your personality. I've always been the kind of person that when I find something that I really like, I just become a completist. So I didn't just read a few Hardy Boy books, I read them all.
Yeah.
And once I discovered Agatha Christie and I liked her stuff, I read all 80 some books.
Yeah.
And so I found Salem's Lot in a used paperback bookstore in '79. And I was reading mostly science fiction and fantasy at the time, but I really, really liked that book. And so I was like, what else has he written? In 1979, it wasn't hard to go back and sort of catch up because there were only 4 or 5 other books. But yeah, just from that point onward, it's been, I would say, probably the one reading constant. There are other authors who I instantly buy everything that they write, but Steve has been the big constant for the last 40 years.
That's amazing. That's really amazing, because as soon as I started running into him, kind of the same thing. I discovered him indirectly through, obviously, it and stuff, but also Michael Whelan. And was it Friday, or it was The Cat Who Walks Through Walls? And it was a Heinlein novel. I love Robert Heinlein. Like you were saying, completist, same idea. Like, I just read everything I could from Heinlein, and then Crichton was an interesting the data stuff. I'm big on science, so I really like his stuff for that reason. But same idea, kind of pulled me in, and it's interesting you said that, because that really.
What about you, Robin? How did you?
Yeah, for me, I think it's very similar, because I mean, I think like all of us, I've always been an obsessive reader. It's like you always have books on the go because it's part of being alive. It makes life meaningful. And then, so I love to read. I read widely, but there are certain authors who speak to me. And I remember reading Salem's Lot, but also you go to The Stand, or you go to, Carrie, and the way Steve saw reality, I thought, it's someone who sees the world like I do. And it was like coming home, because I felt like as a young person, I was the only person in my family who really read sci-fi and fantasy and horror, and and I'd always loved a good ghost story. So to find that, it's like coming home. It's like, okay, this is someone who I feel a connection with.
Yes.
So I was like, yes, I want to read this. And then you think of other authors, like Ursula Le Guin with her her magical universes and science fiction universes. She's another person for me. there are many authors that
Absolutely.
do that, but Bev, like you said, there are certain people you come back to and you feel that deep connection to their vision, isn't it? It's
It's
the
like a
vision of their
scratch to
work.
itch, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
it's a
like
certain,
not everybody can do that. Steve King
yeah,
and Rich Chismar are one of the few people that they have very similar styles. This is interesting, for me at least, and how they can pull me in. Not necessarily writing styles, but like, I mean, maybe I'm not.
a
Well, I don't
vision
know enough about
perhaps.
literary
Yeah,
stuff,
the way
but
to,
they both are
yeah,
able to pull me in with like little to no effort. One of Rich's short stories, I said this to him on the podcast, After the Bombs. I'm not sure if you read that, but absolutely one of the most amazing things I've ever read in my life. And just short, good, just pulls you in and just like gets you. There's very few writers that I've had that experience with. And when I do come across it, it's like, yep, I want to read everything they've got, because you can't get that with every right. And I don't even get that with Heinlein. Like, I love Robert Heinlein. He's probably one of my favorite authors. Asimov, same thing. I love their writing, but it's just not the same type of character involvement or whatever it is. I just feel like I am in virtual reality when I'm reading Stephen King. When I'm reading everything else, it's like virtual reality light. Not to put that weight on the writer, like, but that I can't get as pulled into it as I can with him or Rich. And I would even say, a few other writers that just really, it's not an easy thing to find, I guess.
I think it all boils down to the characters, because there are lots of authors who I've read equally as compulsively. But if you were to hold up one of the books in front of me and ask me who the characters were in that book, I would be hard pressed sometimes. But I can talk at great length, and we have here today, about specific characters, not even necessarily the primary characters in so many of Steve's books.
Right.
Because they're vivid people. Jesse Burlingame, I know a lot about Jesse Burlingame from Gerald's Game.
Yeah.
Any book you want to point me at, I can tell you who the characters are and a lot about them.
That's I can
and that's
say
high praise. That is high praise when you think about it.
I can say confidently, I can't remember almost.
Off the page.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. That's amazing. I never thought about it from that perspective. I love Michael Crichton. I can't think of a single character other than Alan Grant from any of his books. Literally, I hate saying that because I love the material. And again, one of those things that it scratches an itch for me, which is totally the nerdy technical data thing. Whereas King is much more the character involvement and the escapism. But I can't think of a single character that I actually remember from a lot of novels of mine. But almost every Stephen King book I can remember pretty vividly, at least the characters, their story, their background, maybe not their name completely. But when he said Jim Rennie, it's just like, I know exactly who he's talking about. Even right down to like Frank Dodd and all those just random characters that pop up in your head. So I really, really appreciate those perspectives from you guys, for your own personal experiences, and for the listeners out there too that are big into Steve's work, but also the amazing connections you guys have worked to help make this world so big and so connected that it's great to hear your own experiences. So
it's lovely to be here with the three of us. And
absolutely.
Yeah, Bev and I don't get to talk that much, so it's nice we get to share ideas here too.
It's great to hear you guys really kind of get to freely just kind of pass stuff back and forth. And I apologize because there's so many times I'm like, I don't chime in, but I'm like, oh my God, if I don't remember this.
It was great. It was great. It was good, fun conversation.
You guys have been fantastic, and I can't thank you enough for coming on to share this all with us. And I'd love to do this again. I mean, I could totally see getting together and spending another 2 hours. I could spend hours talking about this stuff. But just in general, like, I mean, we get to touch base on a few things like UAPs and whatnot. Usually it's a bit scattered during the episode. So I'm glad we were able to kind of really focus on one of the things that are so incredibly dear to me in my life. I cannot say enough about how much the Dark Tower has impacted my life. So
I think that's for all
it's-
three of us, really.
yeah,
You
I
think
can
about it.
imagine you guys specifically. um, that type of impact is so real, and so just it. I don't know what the word is. I guess is just because it hits on all the nostalgia and the real just strong feelings that you can find yourself in, whether it's that safe spot or it's something that you just need to have that connection. But being able to connect to characters that are real, that you lose, as well as people you lose in your own life, those types of realities, to make characters connect to your own real life to help you get through those things, are invaluable, I think, to our entire experience as human beings. And being able to share that with people who are so involved and can really understand the meaning to fans, and in the writers. And I think King does a really amazing job doing that in his writing, but you guys have also really done amazing job giving nerds like me a whole bunch of encyclopedic material that you can go
Oh,
through.
thank you.
Just make it so rounded. And I mean, right down to the comics and everything. I've only got to dig in to the surface of both of your work in regarding this. Admittedly, all of it's been information that I've gathered on the internet, but I know it's directly, I'm big on source material and where information comes from. Big bibliographies are not popular nowadays in the world of information when they really should be. Being able to look at the sources is important, and every single time, every bit of information I've learned connections wise on the internet all comes from both of your work. So needless to say, that is the top of my focus right now for we'll say the non-digital approach for collecting. And I really would like to leave it on that. And thank you guys so much for coming on. I kind of ranted a little bit there.
Oh, no, but thanks for having us.
You guys have been fantastic, and
Enjoyed it.
thank
Good to
you
see you,
so
Robin.
much.
Great to see you, Bev. We've been sending things back and forth email. We should do that more.
Absolutely.
Hey, and if we can do this again, I'd love to do this again. And I talked to it's tough when you have multiple people on an episode, but I think that it can be really, really great to get those conversations stirred up. I even talked to Rich a while back, try to get you guys all together on an episode, because I think there's just so many cool questions back and forth that right down to Gwendy's the button box and everything that just
That's going to be
it's
like
amazing.
Bev said, it's going to be coming out. So
I know, I'm super excited. All of it. I'm so like gonna spend a lot of money on paper this year.
Oh, it's great. Nothing better than to buy books. That's
Oh my
what I
God,
think.
that smell, guys. And on that note, we'll leave the readers with the smell of wonderfully brand new books. As all you guys know, I'm a big fan of stuffing my face in a new novel. So it's important to always, really emphasize the importance of literature, but also your local bookstores. I didn't really get to go into the ad thing, and I don't want to keep you guys too much, but I think that you guys agree. Your local bookstores are so important, and always try to emphasize that to people. I don't have a direct ad today. My volunteerism ad is go to your local bookstore.
I agree. It's interesting because I've been trying to order books through local bookstores rather than using Amazon,
So
tough. just
Yeah.
just to try and support the is it bookshops.org that goes to small local bookstores and sources books.
Yeah, I did not know that. That's awesome.
I have to find I have it written on my computer, you know what I mean? So it comes up. But there is one that you can go to that actually supports local bookshops, and it works, I think, both in the US and the UK.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, because you do want those small bookshops to survive.
Yes, absolutely.
They're the heart and soul of, for readers everywhere and for people who love books to make a living.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my thought, is that from a creator perspective, I'm always thinking about it from like, I'm a musician. local bands, that's our thing. Same thing
Yeah.
when it comes to local bookstores, local authors,
I
stuff like
agree.
that. So
Yeah, I agree.
you guys have been great today, a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate the back and forth, and you guys handling my my ranting and long talks. I do rant from time to time, and when it comes to nerd stuff, a little bit more than usual. So on that note, we will end this episode of Abstract Transmission. So all the listeners out there, thank you so much for listening and giving feedback and reaching out. I can't thank you guys enough for allowing me to do what I love doing. So thank you guys so much for coming on. Folks out there, be nice to your fellow human being. As always, abstract here, abstract there.
Abstract Transmissions.